The screen flickered to life in every home, on every device, across every continent on Earth. No one had expected the regular morning news to be interrupted. Parents were getting their children ready for school. Workers were heading to their offices. It was just another ordinary Tuesday morning in September. The image that appeared made everyone stop what they were doing. Against a metallic gray background stood a small human boy, barely 8 years old. Do-hyun Park wore his favorite blue dinosaur shirt and black shorts. His black hair was messy, and his eyes were red from crying, but he stood straight and tried to be brave. Behind him towered 3 tall, gray-skinned aliens. They were Orcs, the species that had made first contact with Earth 6 months ago. The tallest one, High Commander Raltek, stepped forward. His voice came through universal translators in a cold, flat tone. "People of Earth," Raltek said, "your governments have refused our generous offer of protection. They continue to hide their military secrets and scientific research from us. This defiance cannot continue." In a small apartment in Seoul, Sun-mi Park dropped her coffee mug. The ceramic shattered on the floor, but she didn't notice. Her eyes were fixed on the screen on her son. Her hands began to shake. Next to her, her husband Taewon grabbed the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. To demonstrate the price of disobedience, Raltek continued, "We have chosen a suitable example. This child is Do-hyun Park, son of your quantum physicist Sun-mi Park and military strategist Taewon Park. His parents' work threatens the stability of our dominion. They have 20 minutes to surrender themselves and their research. If they do not comply, the child dies." The world exploded into action. Government hotlines lit up. Military commanders rushed to their posts. Diplomats desperately tried to open communication channels with the Orcs ships in orbit. In their apartment, Sun-mi and Taewon were already moving. Sun-mi grabbed her research tablet, ready to delete everything. Taewon was on the phone with military command. But before either of them could act, First Speaker Velnar stepped forward on the screen. "Oh, did we say 20 minutes? Velnar's voice was almost playful. "I meant 20 seconds. 19. 18. Sun-mi screamed at the screen. Taewon punched the wall so hard he broke 3 fingers, but he didn't feel the pain. Around the world, parents pulled their own children close. Some covered their kids' eyes. Others couldn't look away. Do-hyun looked directly into the camera. When he spoke, his voice was small but clear. "Mom, Dad, don't give them anything. I remember what you taught me. We don't let bullies win. 5, 4, 3. I love you, Mom. I love you, D." The screen went black for 2 seconds. When the image returned, Do-hyun was gone. First Speaker Velnar smiled at the camera. "Let this be a lesson," he said. "The Orcs Dominion does not make empty threats. You have 1 week to surrender all military assets and scientific research. There will be no more warnings." The broadcast ended. Normal programs resumed, but nothing was normal anymore. In their apartment, Sun-mi and Taewon sat in complete silence. No tears came, no screams, just a deep, cold silence that seemed to freeze the air around them. Across Earth, the response was different. People poured into streets. Some cried. Some shouted in rage. Parents held their children tighter. Military recruitment centers were suddenly flooded with volunteers. In orbit, the Orcs ships maintained their positions, waiting for Earth's surrender. They had chosen their demonstration carefully. Surely now these humans would understand their place. Surely they would submit. First Speaker Velnar sent a message to High Commander Raltek. "The humans will break within days. They are soft, emotional creatures. The death of one child will paralyze them with fear." He was wrong. So terribly wrong. Because in that apartment in Seoul, as the sun began to set, Sun-mi Park finally moved. She walked to her home office, turned on her quantum research computer, and began to work. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with mechanical precision. Behind her, Taiwan made a single phone call to military command. Neither of them had cried yet. There would be time for tears later. Right now, they had work to do. The Arcser thought they had opened a door to humanity's submission. Instead, they had unlocked the gates of hell itself, and those gates were about to swing wide open. The world went quiet for 3 days after the broadcast. No government issued any statements. No military moved its ships. The Arcser's demands hung in the air, met only with silence. In their command ship, the aliens watched Earth with growing confusion. First Speaker Velnar had expected riots, chaos, or immediate surrender. Instead, they saw something stranger: perfect order. Children still went to school. People still went to work. Trains ran on time. But something was different. The usual noise of human radio channels had dropped to almost nothing. Social media became strangely empty. It was as if humanity had simply turned inward, like a sea pulling back before its tsunami. Admiral Hai-Jin Kim sat in her underground office, watching the screens that showed Earth's major cities. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she didn't notice. She was too busy watching the pattern emerge. In every city, more and more people were quietly walking into military recruitment offices. They didn't march or shout. They just signed their names and waited for instructions. "It's happening exactly as we predicted," she said to General Sang-Hoon Lee, who stood by the window. The Arcser think we're paralyzed with fear. Sang-Hoon nodded slowly. Fear? He shook his head. No, this isn't fear. This is rage going cold. In her private lab, Sunmi Park hadn't slept since the broadcast. Her computers ran endless calculations on the Arcser's quantum shielding technology. Other scientists had tried to crack it before, but they had been thinking like scientists. Sunmi was thinking like a mother with nothing left to lose. She stared at her screen, her eyes red but dry. On her desk sat Do Hyun's favorite dinosaur toy. She'd found it under his bed that morning. Now it watched her work, a silent reminder of why she couldn't stop, couldn't rest, couldn't break down. Not yet. Across the city, Taiwan Park walked into military headquarters. The guards recognized him immediately. Everyone knew his face now. They saw the empty look in his eyes and quickly stepped aside. No one tried to stop him as he walked straight into the highest security areas. No one questioned his clearance anymore. In the main strategy room, he found 50 of Earth's top military commanders waiting. They all stood when he entered. No one spoke. No one needed to. They just waited as he walked to the front of the room and turned on his computer. "The Arcser," he said, his voice perfectly steady, "have 3 major weaknesses in their command structure. I've spent 6 months studying them. I was saving this information for negotiations." He paused, his hand touching the screen. "Now we're going to use it to tear their empire apart." Up in orbit, the Arcser ships continued their patrol. Inside them, alien officers wondered why their sensors showed no panic, no military mobilization, no chaos. Some began to feel uneasy, though they couldn't explain why. In their arrogance, they had studied human warfare but ignored human history. They had counted human weapons but hadn't understood human nature. They never learned that Earth's deadliest predator goes quiet before it strikes. On the 4th day, First Speaker Velnar sent another message to Earth. "Your time is running out. Why do you remain silent?" The only response came from a small coffee shop in Seoul. Its owner, an old woman who had watched the broadcast like everyone else, looked up at the Arcser ship visible in the evening sky. She switched her shop sign from open to closed, walked inside, and began to pack food into boxes. "For the soldiers," she told her daughter, who helped her pack. "They'll need good food for what comes next." All across Earth, millions of people were doing the same thing, quietly preparing. Not in panic or fear, but with the slow, terrible purpose of a planet that had just watched aliens kill a child on live TV. The Arcser had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about fear. Instead, they were about to learn one about consequences. 3 months after the broadcast, Sunmi Park emerged from her lab. Her clothes were wrinkled, and her hair had grown long and messy, but her eyes blazed with purpose. She walked straight into the military command center, carrying only a small tablet computer. Admiral Hai-Jin Kim and General Sang-Hoon Lee were discussing fleet movements when Sun Mai entered. They knew her face. Everyone did now. The room fell silent as she plugged her tablet into the main display screen. "I found it," Sun Mai said. Her voice was rough from lack of use. The flaw in their shields, the thing they thought was impossible. On the screen, complex patterns of light danced and shifted. These were recordings of the Orcs ship's quantum shields, taken during their attacks on Earth's outer colonies. Before the broadcast, Sun Mai had studied these patterns as a scientist, looking for interesting discoveries. After the broadcast, she had studied them as a hunter, looking for weak points. "See this pattern?" She pointed to a repeating flash in the shield's energy field. The Orcs think their quantum shields are perfect because they reset 1,000 times per second. But they're wrong. There's a gap, a tiny moment when the shield has to switch from one quantum state to another. She pressed a button, and the display slowed down. Now they could all see it, a split-second flicker in the shield's pattern, like a blink that happened too fast to notice at normal speed. The gap lasts for less than a microsecond. Sun Mai continued. "That's why nobody found it before. But I watched these recordings every day for 3 months. I watched them while holding my son's dinosaur toy. And then I realized, we don't need to break through their shields. We just need to shoot at exactly the right moment." Admiral Hai-Jin leaned forward. "Can we time our weapons to hit during this gap?" Sun Li nodded. "I've already built the timing system. It's simple enough that we can add it to everything. From hand weapons to ship cannons, when the shield flickers, our weapons will fire automatically." General Sang-Hoon studied the display closely. The Orcs have used these shields for hundreds of years. They think they're invincible behind them. That's why they're so bold, so careless. He turned to Sun Mai. "You've given us a way to prove them wrong." Sun Mi touched the screen, freezing it on an image of an Orcs ship. 3 months ago, they showed everyone what they did to my son. They broadcast it because they wanted us to be afraid. Her voice didn't shake anymore when she spoke about Do-hyun. "Now I want them to be afraid." Word of the breakthrough spread quickly through Earth's military. In secret bases, soldiers began training with the new timing systems. In hidden shipyards, engineers installed them on warships. Everything was done quietly, carefully, with the same cold purpose that had marked Earth's actions since the broadcast. That evening, Sun Mai finally went home. She found Taiwan waiting for her. He had his own news. The military strategy was ready. They sat together in Do-hyun's room, surrounded by his toys and books. "The Orcs think they understand humans now," Taiwan said softly. "They think they know what we'll do because they killed our child." Sun Mai picked up the dinosaur toy from her bag. "They don't understand anything," she replied. "They don't know that grief can turn a scientist into a weapon. They don't know that pain can make a mother's mind sharper than any computer." She placed the toy on Do-hyun's pillow. Tomorrow, Earth would begin preparing its response. The Orcs' shields would fail. Their ships would fall. Their empire would burn. And it would all happen because they had killed a child in front of his mother. General Sang-Hoon Lee stood before Earth's combined military council in the underground command center. The room was packed with leaders from every nation's armed forces. On the main screen behind him, a map showed Orcs space in detail. Red dots marked their military bases, shipyards, and command centers. "Thanks to Sun Mai Park's discovery, we can now get through their shields," Sang-Hoon began. "But we need to do more than just hurt them. We need to make them understand exactly why this is happening." He pressed a button, and the image changed to show the Orcs military academy on their homeworld. This is where they train their officers. This is where they teach their warriors that other species are weak. This is where they planned the broadcast that killed Do-hyun Park. Admiral Hai-Jin Kim watched from her seat in the front row. She had known Sang-Hoon for 20 years. She had never seen him look so focused, so certain. "I call it Operation Ghost Child," Sang-hoon continued. "We will strike all their major military targets at once, but our main target is their academy. We will show them that the species they thought was weak has teeth." He explained the plan step by step. Special Forces teams would use Sun-Ni's quantum shield breaker to slip past Arxer defenses. Each team had a specific target. Some would hit weapon factories. Others would destroy shipyards. But the most important team, led by Taiwan Park himself, would enter the academy. "Taiwan has studied their security for months," Sang-hoon said. "He knows their patterns, their habits, their weaknesses. When he enters that academy, every cadet and instructor will learn what happens when you harm a human child." Admiral Hai-jin stood up. "My fleet will support this operation. We'll position our ships here, and here." She pointed to spots on the map. "When the teams strike, we'll prevent any Arxer ships from responding." The room was silent as the military leaders studied the plan. It was dangerous. Many soldiers would die. But when they looked at the empty chair in the corner, the one where Do-hyun's dinosaur toy now sat, they knew it had to be done. One general raised his hand. "The Arxer still don't know we can break their shields. They think we're helpless. How do we use that?" Sang-hoon smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They expect us to be afraid, to hide, to surrender. So we'll keep acting scared until the moment we strike. Let them think their broadcast worked. Let them think they broke us." He walked over to the chair with the dinosaur toy and picked it up. 3 months ago, they killed a child to teach us fear. Instead, they taught us rage. Cold, patient rage. The kind that waits in the dark. The kind that plans. The military leaders nodded. They had all seen the broadcast. Many had children of their own. They understood that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure no alien empire ever thought about hurting a human child again. As the meeting ended, Admiral Hai-jin approached Sang-hoon. "Will this bring Do-hyun back?" she asked softly. Sang-hoon placed the dinosaur toy back on the chair. "No," he answered, "but it will make his name echo through their empire for 1,000 years. Every time they think about attacking Earth, they'll remember the child they killed. They'll remember what happened next, and they'll think twice." The plan was set. The teams were ready. In orbit, Earth's fleet waited quietly, looking weak and defeated. The Arxer's deadline for surrender was coming soon. They were about to learn that sometimes silence means death. The Arxer Military Academy stood tall and proud on their home world. Its gray walls had never been breached in 800 years. Inside, young Arxer cadets learned about warfare, studied tactics, and watched recordings of their victory broadcasts, including the one from 3 months ago. They didn't notice the small shadows moving through their halls. They didn't see the human Special Forces teams sliding past their patrol routes. And they didn't know that their perfect quantum shields had gaps that Sun-Ni's devices could find. Taiwan Park led the main team. He moved silently, the same way he used to move when checking on Do-hyun sleeping at night. In his ear, Admiral Hai-jin's voice whispered that all teams were in position. Around the academy, 20 other teams waited near different Arxer military bases and shipyards. "Remember," Taiwan said softly to his team, "when the shields drop, we have exactly 10 minutes before they figure out what's happening. Make them count." In the academy's main hall, first-year cadets watched their combat instructor explain why other species were weak. The instructor pointed to a screen showing the broadcast from Earth. "See how they went quiet after we killed just one child. This is why we are superior. They break easily." The door opened. The instructor turned, expecting to see another teacher. Instead, he saw Taiwan Park walking calmly into the room. The human wore black combat gear and carried Earth's newest weapons, but what scared the instructor most was his face. It showed no anger, no fear, no emotion at all. "Hello," Taiwan said clearly. "I'm the father of the child you just showed in your lesson." The instructor reached for his weapon, but it was too late. Across the academy, throughout the Arxer homeworld, and all across their empire, quantum shields began to flicker and fail. Sun's devices had found every gap, every weakness, every flaw in their perfect defense. In orbit, Admiral Hai-Jin watched her display light up as Earth's fleet appeared from hiding. "All ships begin Operation Ghost Child," she ordered. Her voice was steady, like she was asking someone to pass the salt at dinner. The Academy's alarms started screaming. Cadets ran in panic as more human teams appeared in their halls. Their weapons didn't work. Their shields didn't protect them. Their calls for help went unanswered as Earth's ships blocked all their communications. Taiwan walked to the Academy's broadcast room, the same room they had used to transmit their threats to Earth. He sat down at their communication station and turned it on. His voice reached every Arxer ship, base, and colony. "3 months ago, you killed my son to teach us fear," he said. "Now we're here to teach you something. Look around. Your shields are down. Your weapons can't stop us. Your pride led you to this moment." In 20 different locations, human teams struck at the heart of the Arxer military. Shipyards exploded. Command centers fell silent. Training bases watched helplessly as their defenses failed. "You should have studied Earth's history more carefully," Taiwan continued. "You should have learned what happens when someone hurts our children. You thought that broadcast would break us. Instead, it awakened something you don't understand." He looked at the camera, and for the first time in 3 months he smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You should have left our children alone." Panic spread through Arxer space like a wildfire. Their mighty ships, once protected by unbreakable shields, now drifted helplessly as Earth's fleet struck with deadly precision. Admiral Hai-Jin watched from her command ship as decades of Arxer military power crumbled in hours. "Status report," she called, her voice calm as she studied the tactical display. "Main shipyards at Sector 7 destroyed," her officer reported. "Military bases in Sectors 3 through 6 have surrendered. The Academy is completely under our control." He paused, checking new information. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple high-ranking Arxer officials trying to escape in civilian ships." Hai-Jin nodded, just as Taiwan predicted. "They're running away like cowards." She opened a channel to all Earth ships. "Remember our orders. Capture, don't kill. Especially First Speaker Velnar. He has an appointment to keep." In the Academy's command center, Taiwan Park watched as reports flooded in from across Arxer space. Their military structure was collapsing. The same officers who had bragged about their superiority now begged for mercy. The same leaders who had mocked human emotions now showed their own fear. A young communications officer approached him. "Sir, we've located First Speaker Velnar. He's trying to reach the emergency bunkers in the northern mountains." Taiwan touched the small dinosaur toy in his pocket, the one he'd carried into battle. "Send Team 3 to intercept. Tell them to be careful. He's mine." In orbit, Sunmei Park worked in Admiral Hai-Jin's ship, monitoring her quantum shield breakers. Each time the Arxer tried to adapt their shields, she was there, finding new gaps, creating new weaknesses. The same mind that had once studied stars now turned their own technology against them. "They're trying to rewrite their shield frequencies," she told the Admiral. "They don't understand. This isn't about technology anymore. This is about a mother's promise to her son." High Commander Raltek, the leader who had ordered Du Hyun's execution, tried to rally his forces from his command bunker, but his orders went unheard. His mighty fleet had scattered. His invincible armies had surrendered, all because they had never imagined that killing one human child would turn an entire planet into a weapon. First Speaker Velnar almost reached his escape ship. Almost. He was running across the landing pad when he saw Team 3 waiting for him. Behind them stood Taiwan Park. "Going somewhere?" Taiwan asked quietly. "But you haven't finished your broadcast. Don't you want to show the galaxy how superior you are?" Velnar fell to his knees. "Please," he begged. "We didn't know. We thought it would make you surrender. We thought. You thought wrong. Sun Mi's voice came through Taiwan's communicator. She had patched into the area's speakers. You thought killing our sun would break us. Instead, it gave us a focus that your species will never understand. By sunset, Earth's ships had secured the Orcs' capital. Their mighty dominion, built on fear and arrogance, had fallen in less than a day. Admiral Hai-Jin's fleet surrounded their worlds. General Sang-Hoon's teams controlled their bases. And in a small cell in the Academy's detention block, First Speaker Velnar waited to learn what humanity would do with him. He had broadcast a child's death to teach humanity fear. Now he would learn what that broadcast had really taught them about justice. The trial of First Speaker Velnar was broadcast across every screen in Orcs space. Earth made sure of that. They used the same channels, the same frequencies, even the same camera angles that the Orcs had used 3 months ago. The symmetry was perfect. Velnar sat in a plain metal chair, much like the one Du Hyun had stood beside. But unlike the brave child, the former first speaker trembled. His gray skin had turned almost white with fear. He kept looking at the door, perhaps hoping someone would save him. No one came. Sun Mi and Taiwan Park walked into the room together. They looked different now. The raw grief in their eyes had hardened into something else. Not hatred, but a cold, clear purpose. They sat down across from Velnar, placing Du Hyun's dinosaur toy on the table between them. "Do you know why we brought you here?" Sun Mi asked quietly. Her voice carried across every speaker in the Orcs Empire. "You thought you understood humans. You thought killing a child would break us." Taiwan leaned forward. "But you never asked yourself the important question. What happens after you break something?" He touched the dinosaur toy gently. "Sometimes broken things come back stronger. Sometimes they come back sharp." Velnar tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. Will you kill me now?" "No," Sun Mi said. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. "That would be too easy. Death is what you chose for our son. We choose something else for you." Admiral Hai-Jin stepped into the room. Behind her, screens lit up showing children playing in parks across Earth. Human children laughing, running, living free and happy. More screens showed alien children from other worlds the Orcs had terrorized, now also free. "This is your sentence," Taiwan explained. "You will live. You will watch, every day for the rest of your life. You will see what you tried to destroy. You will see the joy you tried to kill. And you will remember Du Hyun Park." Sun Mi stood up and walked closer to Velnar. "In your prison cell, these images will play day and night. You will see children growing up happy and strong. You will see them graduate, achieve their dreams, become parents themselves. All the things you stole from our son." But that's torture," Velnar whispered. "No," Taiwan corrected him. "Torture is what you did to parents across the galaxy. This is education. You're going to learn what childhood means, what family means, what you really destroyed when you killed our son." Admiral Hai-Jin stepped forward. "Let the record show that the human race chooses justice over revenge. We will not execute prisoners. We will not torture. We will teach." She looked directly into the cameras. "Let every species in the galaxy remember, we are better than those who hurt our children." As guards led Velnar away, Sun Mi picked up the dinosaur toy. Tears finally fell from her eyes, but her voice stayed strong. "Du Hyun loved to learn new things," she said to the watching galaxy. "He would have wanted his death to teach something important. So let it teach this. Humanity's strength isn't in our weapons or our rage. It's in our ability to choose justice even when revenge would be easier." The broadcast ended, but its message echoed across the stars. The Orcs Empire had tried to break humanity by killing a child. Instead, they had learned that true strength lies not in the ability to take life, but in the wisdom to transform grief into justice. 6 months after the fall of the Orcs dominion, Earth's ships brought something unexpected to the Arxur homeworld. Teachers, doctors, and builders. The same planets that had witnessed humanity's power now saw its kindness. Admiral Hai-Jin walked through the streets of the Arxur capital with General Sang-hoon. Where military bases once stood, they now saw schools being built. Where weapon factories had dominated the skyline, hospitals rose instead. The lower-class Arxur were victims too. Hai-Jin explained to a group of Earth reporters. Their leaders used fear to control them, just like they tried to use fear against us. Breaking that cycle means helping them build something better. In one of the new schools, young Arxur children sat in classrooms for the first time. Their species had always trained their young for war, but now they learned about science, art, and history. Human teachers worked alongside Arxur adults who had chosen to help build a new future. Sun Mai Park visited these schools often. She had turned her quantum research lab into a science education center. Today, she stood before a class of Arxur children, holding Do-hyun's dinosaur toy. "This belonged to my son," she told them. "He loved learning about dinosaurs because they were powerful but extinct. They disappeared because they couldn't adapt to change. Your old empire was like that, powerful but unable to change. But you can be different." Across Arxur space, things were changing. The military academy where Ta-1 had led the strike was now a university. Former cadets studied alongside students from Earth and other freed worlds. In the main hall, where they once learned about conquest, a large photo of Do-hyun Park reminded everyone why change was necessary. General Sang-hoon oversaw the transformation of military bases into community centers. "Every weapon we found," he explained to visiting diplomats, "we turned into something useful. Fighter ships became transport vessels. Training grounds became parks. We're not destroying their civilization. We're helping it grow up." The former first speaker Velnar watched all this from his cell. As promised, he saw endless images of children from all species growing, learning, and playing together. At first, he had tried to look away, but after months of watching happiness instead of fear, something in him began to change. One day, he asked for permission to speak to Sun Mai and Ta-1. When they arrived, he didn't beg for freedom. Instead, he asked questions about Do-hyun. What had been his favorite subjects in school? What had made him laugh? What had he wanted to be when he grew up? "I watched these children every day," Velnar said quietly. "I see what childhood should be, what I helped take away. I can never fix what I did, but I want to understand what I destroyed." Sun Mai looked at Ta-1, who nodded slowly. Together, they shared stories about their son with the alien who had ordered his death. It wasn't forgiveness. That would never come. But it was something else, proof that even the deepest darkness could learn to recognize light. As Earth's reconstruction efforts continued, a saying spread among the Arxur people. "A child's death ended our empire, but a child's memory is building our future." They began to understand that real strength came not from causing fear, but from overcoming it. 10 years after the fall of the Arxur Dominion, people from across the galaxy gathered at a special place. The spot where Do-hyun Park had been executed was now a beautiful memorial garden. In its center stood a statue of a small boy holding a dinosaur toy, surrounded by flowers from 100 different worlds. Sun Mai and Ta-1 Park walked through the garden, their hair now streaked with gray. They stopped at the statue, where Admiral Hai-Jin waited with General Sang-hoon. All around them, children from Earth, former Arxur worlds, and other alien species played together in the sunshine. Do-hyun would have loved this, Sun Mai said softly, touching the statue's base. On it, words in every known language told the story of a child whose death had changed the galaxy. He always wanted to meet aliens and make new friends. Ta-1 watched a group of young Arxur children showing human kids how to play their traditional games. He did meet them, he said. And in a way, he did make friends. Look at them all playing together. This is his legacy. Admiral Hai-Jin stepped forward. The Du Hyun Foundation has opened its 100th school today, she reported. The new one is on a world at the edge of known space. They asked specifically for both human and Arcser teachers. The foundation had been Sun Mi's idea. After the war, she had used her quantum research money to start an organization dedicated to protecting and educating children of all species. Now, its symbol, a dinosaur toy, was known throughout the galaxy as a sign of hope and safety. In his cell, Velnar had watched the foundation grow. His daily viewings of children growing up happy and free had changed him completely. He had started writing books about what he had learned, about the true meaning of strength, and the importance of protecting the innocent. His words helped other species understand why Earth's response to his terrible act had been so powerful. We received a message from the new alien species we discovered last month, General Sang-hoon told the group. They were afraid of us at first, but when they learned about Du Hyun's story and saw how we rebuilt instead of destroyed, they asked to join the Galactic Council. A small Arcser girl approached Sun Mi, holding up a drawing. It showed the statue with stars all around it. "Teacher Park," she said shyly, "I drew this for Du Hyun. My grandmother says he's the reason I can go to school and make friends with humans." Sun Mi knelt down and hugged the child. 10 years ago, such a moment would have seemed impossible. Now it was normal to see humans and Arcser sharing tears, joy, and hope. As the sun set, lights came on around the garden. They were special lights that Sun Mi had designed, creating patterns in the air that looked like quantum shield patterns. But instead of protecting weapons, these lights protected memories and dreams. The Arcser thought killing one human child would make us weak, Ta Won said to a group of visiting reporters. Instead, it showed everyone the true source of human strength. We don't just survive loss, we transform it. We turn grief into growth, pain into progress, and memory into hope. Above the garden, stars began to appear. Somewhere out there, new worlds were learning Du Hyun's story. They were learning that the most powerful force in the universe isn't fear or weapons or even revenge. It's the way a single child's memory can teach an entire galaxy about love, justice, and the real meaning of strength.